And now for our final conversation of the day. My next guest has been a founder. He was part of the PayPal Mafia. He is an investor who runs his own firm. He launched a new company today, and I believe he also maybe has a small podcast. Some of you might have heard. Welcome, David Sachs. I didn't see the pin. The pin is a nice ad. So, David, we have a lot to talk about today, but let's start. You're wearing a T-shirt and now apparently a pin, which is a channels crossed out. If you can't see this, you launched a company this morning called Glue. I'm assuming this is not an arts and craft company. It seems to be a Slack killer.
Yeah.
Why does Slack need to be killed?
Well, everyone hates channels. Am I right? I mean, aren't you guys sick of looking at all the channels? You have to go through all the channels. We keep hearing. I demoed this for Chamath, and he said, "You had me at no channels." So the problem is that to find that one thread that you need to see, you have to join the whole channel because that's the unit of conversation, and then you get all this noise. So everyone in the company ends up in every channel. And what we've heard over and over again from teams is that as they get bigger, channels just don't scale. So I think the industry was yearning for a different type of chat solution even before ChatGPT came out. And we were working on it, and then ChatGPT came out, and we kind of realized that this was the direction. If you look at ChatGPT, it's just single focused topical threads that sit in your sidebar. It's just not multiplayer, but that's kind of the model that people want, is just you create a thread, you address it to the people and groups that you care about, they get it, and it's just a much simpler model. And then the other thing we've done is we've incorporated AI fully so that it's just like a virtual member of your team.
And GPT you brought into it?
Yeah. So, well, we're sort of LLM agnostic. So, we work with ChatGPT, we work with Claude. We're going to incorporate, every model we can.
We can put up. I know we have a slide quickly, kind of what this looks like. Hopefully, they can put up in the back. There it is. So let me ask. Okay, so you think people get channel fatigue? Why, if they start using Glue regularly and build up enough inside their company, why won't they get thread fatigue just like they got channel fatigue?
Well, because you just get the threads that you care about, so it's just much more precise. So
in the sense of though, if you're somebody inside a company who people take you within craft, right? They always think you should, maybe not always, think you should be aware of things that are happening. They want your advice on things. You could just start getting tagged over and over and over again.
Yeah, I could, but still, someone has shown an intent to include me. The problem right now is that you have to go through all your channels to make sure you're not missing something. I mean, you can be tagged in Slack as well.
Yeah.
So it's just the channel model just doesn't scale. A better unit of conversation is the thread. That is the way that, for example, AI chats work.
Yep. It's the way Yammer used to work.
Yammer was feed-based. So yeah, we've kind of gone from feeds was the model back in roughly 2008 because social networking was the big disruption. And then we moved to kind of IRC channels with Slack, and then now we're in the era of ChatGPT. And so we just think that people want simple threaded conversations, but importantly, they want AI to be a full member of the team and the chat.
Yeah.
And so one of the problems with Slack is if you want to ask AI a question, you just got to do it through your DM. It's like it's not a team experience.
You were, obviously, you founded Yammer, you sold to Microsoft, you were an early investor in Slack. Do you feel weird at all basically trying to, I mean, I know Yammer as a brand doesn't exist anymore, they've incorporated it in something else. Do you feel weird at all trying to take both of them out?
No, not at all. It's a space I've had an interest in for a while. So, the guys on the pod joke that Glue is Yammer 3.0, where there was Yammer and then there was Slack, which is kind of like Yammer 2.0, and then this is Yammer 3.
One of the things about it, so you showed me kind of some of the stuff last week. We kind of went over it a little bit. And one of the things I found interesting about it was it's not just that you and I or if we're in the same company having a conversation or we're part of a thread. The system itself is able to kind of ingest the corpus of information that's gone into it from all of those threads and conversations, I think excluding direct messages. Mm-hmm. And it can make suggestions to you, et cetera. There's some dystopian pieces of this, though, right? That if I'm an employee at a company and I'm like, wait, the CEO can figure out, am I the least productive member of the team? Am I the one who comes up with the worst ideas? Am I the one who came up with that terrible idea? I was the first one to say it. Any concern that people are going to look at this inside a company and say, yeah, this is not a system I want to introduce myself to?
Well, you could call it dystopian or you could call it kind of awesome. I think it's kind of awesome. I mean, look, so I've been using Glue inside of Craft Ventures now for a year, and because AI has access to the chat history, I can do things like say, who at Craft has contributed the most to deal flow? And it will actually render an opinion about that.
And who's contributed the least to deal flow?
Well, haven't asked that question. Maybe I should try that. But yeah, I can ask things like who at Craft knows the most about this vertical or this topic, And it gives me some really good answers. It's pretty mind-blowing, actually, what it can do. I've asked it, should I invest in this company? It'll give me an argument. It'll give me a summary of the arguments for and against investing, but based on the chat history where people have been talking about it. But they've been talking about it, in several different places, and it can essentially produce an investment memo for me.
Is it I'm just curious, is it exclusive to stuff that's inside? So for example, so you guys are having a conversation, but the next day, yesterday, the Journal had a front page story about fraud at said company for whatever reason. Does it ingest that as well? Does it know that if one of you hasn't put it in there?
No, well, you have to tell it if you want it to go look on the web or something like that. But the point is just that it has access to all of your chat history and all the attachments and all your app integrations.
You mentioned that it's LLM agnostic, but GPT is part of it. You obviously saw the rollout yesterday. Of everything you saw come out, what was the most interesting iteration or most important thing, if not for Glue, but just in general?
Yeah, so I think the most valuable thing for Glue is just that GPT-4o or Omni. It's much more performant than the previous version. They say it's twice as fast. I believe that. Honestly, in Glue, it felt 10 times as fast.
Really?
We've already incorporated it, so for our purposes, it's the best LLM at this moment. But that could change over time, and that's why
speed right now for you is the main differentiator.
Yeah, speed and cost, I guess, but and reasoning capabilities, and then context window is important too. The bigger the context window gets, the more information you can feed into it to synthesize. But look, these foundation models are going to be in a constant state of competition with each other, and we just want to ride that wave as they get better and better to take advantage of those capabilities. And we don't know who's going to win, so we're going to integrate with all the key players, and then again ride that wave.
Something you've talked about on the podcast a bunch is this question of open source versus closed source when it comes to these LLMs. Where exactly do you come? Not where do you come down on, because you say we don't know who's going to win this, but do you believe it's going to be a closed model that becomes, if not dominant, at least quasi wins this?
No, I mean I can
ask in the context of Glue. In 5 years, if Glue's hopefully still around and doing well, where's most of that work going?
Well, so Llama 3 is already at the point where it's roughly as good as some versions of GPT-4, maybe GPT-4 Turbo. It's not as good as GPT-0 that they just released. So OpenAI has managed to stay ahead of open source by some number of months, 3 months, 6 months, and the question is whether they can hold on to that lead or not. But
do you think that's because they're just better engineers, or is that because they started first?
Probably a head start, and then then they were able to use the head start to attract a lot of talent, and it feeds on itself.
In terms of Glue, Kraft seeded it. How long until it goes out and tries to raise an A?
We'll probably do that soon. Yeah.
Ballpark, how much you want to raise?
It'd be like a normal Series A.
Which is in this world sometime. I've seen some Series A's of some companies say AI and they've raised hundreds of millions. So
I know we're not going to try and do anything crazy. It just you just never know where a round's going to land until you go through the process.
You announced last question on this. I guess you announced Glue this morning. About an hour and a half, 2 hours later, Facebook announced that it is shutting down its kind of quasi-rival product. Coincidence? Happy? Early investor in Facebook?
Yeah, I think it shows how hard this space is. I mean, people think it's easy. It's like, oh, you can just copy, work chat or whatever. Actually, there's a lot of really subtle product interactions and usability concerns. And you really have to get the details right. It doesn't really matter if you're a huge company like Facebook or Meta. If you don't really understand the nuances of workplace communication, you won't get it right. So this is a space that we've been involved in for a long time. And I think we've created a product that actually is better than what currently exists. So that's hard to do.
24 hours ago, did you view Facebook as part of the competitive set that you guys were going to compete with, or did you not really consider that as a major player?
I mean, it was on our radar, but Teams and Slack were the two biggest, obviously.
Glue obviously is kind of part of Kraft's mission, investment mission for the most part is kind of B2B startups. Are there any B2B startups you see now, the things you do, the things you don't do, that don't have an AI component at this point?
Well, I would say that most SaaS apps are trying to figure out how to incorporate AI into their product roadmap. So for sure, but there's exceptions. There are some companies where it's just not applicable yet. I mean, Elon said that he hasn't figured out how to make AI applicable to SpaceX, for example. So it's just some companies it's not going to be, at least not yet.
How often do you get pitched a company that is, call it AI powered, AI enabled or whatever, and you look and go, no, you're not. Like, that's nice in the press release, but not only are you not, it's not even aspirational, like there's nothing here.
Well, at this point, I think most of the startups that are pitching AI actually are doing something with AI. That was more of a concern, I think, several years ago, where there was a lot of fake AI going on. But at this point, most of the AI ideas they have some nexus to AI.
I'm correct in saying you guys, am I correct in saying Kraft is not invested in any of the LLM companies? Or am I wrong about that?
Well, nothing's been announced yet.
So what have you invested in, David?
Well, I mean, so there's different levels of the stack, right? And
Yep.
I think we're basically application investors. So our view is that what's happening at the model layer is really interesting and it's great. And we're now just beginning to scratch the surface of what's going to happen at the application layer. Obviously, Glue is an example of that. I think the key for apps is you want to think about as those foundation models become more and more powerful, does that help you or hurt you? If it helps you, great, you want to ride that innovation wave.
Yeah.
If it hurts you because you just got obsoleted, you just got eaten by the underlying platform layer, that's a really big problem. So for example, with GPT-4o, some of those conversational abilities that got rolled out, I wonder, what does that do to all the companies that are working on like, virtual customer support reps or virtual sales reps, where a big part of their product roadmap was working on the conversational abilities. Now,
Yeah.
if they were working on a different piece, like say workflow, then they'll be fine, and they let the model just do more of the conversation piece. But if what they had spent the last 2 years doing was conversation, they just became obsolete. So you have to be very, very careful when you're building on top of these models to understand where their innovation ends and your innovation begins.
You talked about what a traditional Series A, and I mentioned that so many of these companies, particularly on the foundational model side, have raised just insane amounts of money, kind of remarkable amounts of money. Do you think is there going to be a venture bloodbath when it comes to a lot of these companies that have raised $5, $6, $1 billion, literally going to nothing?
I think that always happens.
Maybe never though with this amount of money going into individual companies.
Well, I would say that there's two kinds of bubbles out there. If you look at history,
Yeah.
there's kind of tulip bubbles and there's railroad bubbles. So tulip bubbles are basically, the whole thing is like a greater fool theory. It's a mania. The thing just doesn't have that much underlying value. Then you got railroad bubbles where actually you're building something that has immense value, and maybe you have a period of overinvestment, but then the ROI on that eventually catches up. The dot-com bubble was actually like that. It took 15 years or something, but finally the return on investment did finally even pay off that bubble that we had in '99. So I don't even think we're at bubble levels yet in AI. I don't. But
when do you identify? How do you identify a bubble? How do you identify the peak of a bubble in your mind?
Well, there's some froth, but right now, but it doesn't just psychologically.
Some froth. There's a little
Yeah, for sure. There's some froth, and look, I mean, VCs are always kind of herding into the next big thing, but just psychologically, it doesn't feel like the bubble we had in either 1999 or in say 2021. And part of that is also about the macro environment plays a role. It's harder to have a bubble when you've got high interest rates or relatively high interest rates. When money is really loose and free, you start getting a lot more speculation.
So you think there was more bubbleiciousness, call it 3 years ago than there is now?
Oh yeah, 2021 was the peak.
Speaking of 2021, it's also when venture-backed companies were still going public. They basically don't do that anymore. Read a couple of small exceptions. I've written about this a little bit. Almost any time I talk to a limited partner, not a Kraft one per se, although probably some of them too, they're annoyed with venture capitalists as an asset class. They want their money back, or they want distributions. They want distributions. They gave you money. They'd like money. They look and they say these companies keep raising more money at higher valuations still. No one has the guts to go public. Are you trying to push any of your companies to go public?
You can't really push them.
Yes, you can. They did that.
Well,
it just changed when VCs became, quote, founder friendly.
Well, see, I don't think VCs are the reason that companies are going public or not going public. I think that it has everything to do with the market. And so, for example, a few years ago, you could go public with 100 million of ARR as a SaaS company, not really a problem. Now, and the market kind of looks with
What do you
more
think you
scrutiny
need for
at
a
that.
SaaS company? What's the threshold?
Like 500 really is a much more comfortable place. So it's just harder because the bar is higher, because the market is more skeptical right now. I'm talking about the public market, the buyers ultimately. Also, valuations are just lower because, again, interest rates have gone up, so the discount rates are higher. So I think it's just a tougher environment. That's the main reason. It's got less to do with VCs.
Has that changed your calculus when you're investing in companies now? The fact that if you were investing 5 years ago, company needed 100 to go out, now it's going to need $500 million. Does that change the sorts of companies you're willing to back?
Not really. We're thinking very long term. I mean, if a LP is worried about getting their money back in 1 year, 2 years, even 5 years, well, 10 to 12 years starts getting very reasonable because these are 10 to 12 year funds typically. So I think that's reasonable. But look, if you need the money soon, do not invest in a venture fund. This is not the right time frame for that type of investment. Just put your money in the market and keep it liquid.
Speaking of investments, I'm curious, did you invest, or are you investing in XAI?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's not, we should let the company kind of do their own announcement, but I've told other people that we're participating.
Again, I'm just curious, basic explanation, basic reason why?
Well, we're believers in Elon.
Did you end up investing in X? There were obviously some leaked messages between you, and it sounded like you said, we're willing to invest, but I don't have the kind of check sizes you're really looking for. Are you actually invested in the main company?
We don't really have a vehicle to do like private equity type investments. That was a very novel structure for us, so we actually didn't end up participating. It's just we didn't really have a vehicle for that at the time.
Did you think about doing an SPV or something like that, or not worth doing?
We haven't done SPV. It's just complicated.
You were known for being kind of in that war room for the first week or two. What do you think was your main contribution in that war room?
What was my main contribution?
Or what did you feel your role was?
I don't know if it was a role. It was more just like I was there to kind of pitch in and help out.
In retrospect, looking back, what did you pitch or help out most with?
You know what? It was just a matter of gathering information and then helping to synthesize and present it in an informal way so that better decisions can be made. That's basically it. Which
was a more hectic situation, when you were promoted to become CEO of Zenefits, or that week and a half or whatever at the beginning of Twitter?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if they're both somewhat hectic.
But I'm curious, so for those who don't know, so you were this is prior to Kraft, you were at Zenefits, the whole scandal happened there, you were promoted CEO, the reputation you got was the person who righted the ship. Mm-hmm. When you talk about froth in the VC market, are you surprised that Parker has raised an enormous amount of money for a new company?
Not really. I mean, he always had a strong vision in that space, and it's not that hard to raise money, so.
I should rephrase. Are you surprised that VCs gave him so much money, given the history?
No, I mean, especially during that time period, it's still relatively easy to raise capital for venture.
That's fair. Is there anything within Kraft, when you look at kind of your model and what you're looking at, is there something you're looking to expand into? I mean, you talked about how you didn't do X because you didn't have a private equity-like vehicle. You do have a growth fund. You do have an early stage fund. Is there some, call it, third leg of that stool you want to launch at some point from an investment standpoint?
Not really. I mean, we just kind of keep it simple. There's kind of early stage venture and there's kind of growth. We see early stage as seed and A, and then growth for us is B and C.
Okay.
And we just keep it pretty simple. We're not interested in doing anything complicated. We haven't done SPVs. We haven't done private equity deals. Let's just try to keep it simple.
Do you feel your deal flow is significantly better since All In started and became popular than before that? You obviously had all the relationships before that.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me if All In is good for business or not. I mean, it's probably on the whole better. I think there's a lot of.
You think there are deals you lose because of it?
Probably. I mean, there's a lot of VCs out there trying to be all things to all people, and that's obviously not me. People are either going to like me or hate me based on what they hear, but hopefully what they hear on the pod is that, aside from whatever reviews I take, that I present the logic and reasoning behind it, so hopefully they like my thought process. And if as a result of that they want to work with me, great, and if they don't, that's fair too. What
percentage of your time right now do you feel you devote to being a venture capitalist compared to podcast guest, Twitter power user?
Is there really a difference in those two jobs?
For some, I'm sorry, Twitter power user talking about things that have relatively nothing to do with technology and investing.
The pod is something we do once a week, so it's.
But for you, how much prep goes into that? Do you just hop on and you just talk whatever Jason says, or do you?
No, I mean, like we have a topic list that sometimes it comes together at the last minute. Sometimes it comes together a day or two before. I try to do a couple hours of let's call it research on the topic. So, like I'll have receipts for my arguments, things like that.
I guess the reason I ask, do you view yourself in 5 or 10 years still being a venture capitalist, full-time venture capitalist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've signed up for 10-year funds, and we're on fund 4. So.
Do you want to run for office at some point?
No.
Not at all? Really?
No, I really don't have any desire to do that.
Why not? As somebody who clearly has a lot of very strong views on a lot of things political, why don't you want to, for lack of a better term, be in the arena?
Well,
That part of the arena.
Yeah, so I think the job of a politician is different than the job of somebody who just cares about issues and advocates for issues on something, or influences on a podcast. And so, yeah, I do have issues that I care about, and I do try to advocate for them when I feel like the country's on the wrong track, particularly. But that doesn't mean I would want to do the day-to-day job of a politician. I mean, a politician, basically, you fundraise and you push a button, in Washington. That's kind of the job. And I don't want to demean it too much, but that's most of the day-to-day. It's not a fun job to do. So, if on the margins I can have a very small impact trying to influence the debate on issues I care about, that's kind of good enough for me.
You do fundraising, though, although you're doing it on behalf of other people. Are you holding a fundraiser for Trump in the city next month?
So the way we're approaching it on the pod is that we did an event for a couple of candidates, where we did an event for Bobby Kennedy, and we did an event for Vivek Ramaswamy, where they came on the pod, and then we did a fundraiser for them. So so having done it with Kennedy, we have extended an invitation to both Trump and Biden, and we're waiting to kind of hear back. So far, the Trump people seem more open to it than the Biden people.
So if there's a fundraiser, that means there'll also be an interview on the pod?
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I can't commit. I don't. It's not locked down yet. That'd be my hope.
For you though, and as somebody who does have kind of strong opinions on things, as part of that, do you feel? How do you get your mind around trying to raise money for someone who, I mean, to some extent you support, but you aren't necessarily going to pull a lever for?
Well, I think part of the reason you do a fundraiser is that you have some sort of commonality with a candidate, and it doesn't mean you agree with them on everything, because that's just impossible. There's no candidate who's like just a perfect issue overlap for you. I've done events for Ro Khanna because I respected his position on free speech and civil liberties and the use of diplomacy in foreign policy. I did an event for Kirsten Sinema back when she was a Democrat, because I thought she was good on the whole budget issue. And in any event, you try to find common ground, and the way events are kind of the way that you interact with the political system. It creates a forum for you to get to know a candidate better, or an elected official. Maybe they're not even running at that point, and it's a way for you to include your friends and business associates, and it provides a little bit of a service that way for people who want to participate.
For the candidate, it raises the money.
For the candidate, but also people in the community who want to learn more. So, and then it's kind of a fun thing to do. You're hosting these types of things. So, yeah, I mean, this is like the way that if you want to participate in some small way, this is kind of how it works.
The stances you've taken, whether it's been geopolitics, domestic policies, et cetera, when it comes to raising money for craft, do you think that's cost you, either, if not cost you an LP, have any of the LPs said, basically shut up, please?
I have not heard that. Look, it's possible that there are LPs out there that we're not going to get because they don't like some of my views. It's definitely possible.
Or if not your views, just the fact that you're out there advocating for anything, really.
It's possible, but like I said, there's a lot of VCs out there who are just totally plain vanilla and undifferentiated and never say anything and don't seem to care about anything. And it's just like, the world doesn't need another one of those. So I'd rather be a little bit edgy. Hopefully I do it in a thoughtful way, but I'm also just being honest about what I believe. And then if there are people who want to work with me based on that, great. And if they don't, that's fine too. I'm not.
If Trump comes on the pod and you do a fundraiser for him, something you said, obviously, and you know this, on the pod in the days after January 6th, you said the Trump, quote, had disqualified himself from being a candidate at a national level ever again. But if you hold a fundraiser for him, what changed?
Well, Biden's done 5 things to disqualify himself since then. So, look, if I had to judge all these candidates according to some perfect standard, I think.
No, but your standard. You said he wasn't qualified.
Neither is Biden. I think none of them seem qualified.
So is this a lesser of two evils?
Well, look, I said very early on that, and polling showed this, the vast majority of the American public did not want to have a rematch of 2020. Right. But that's what we've got. So we're at this place. And politics very often is a choice. Do you want to go in that direction or that direction? And, you can harp on small things here or there, but at the end of the day, again, it's just, do you want to go that way or that way? And, I'd say at this point, bigger disagreements with Biden than with Trump.
Speaking of disagreements, what from a call it a tech economy perspective? So there's a lot of obviously issues, not general interest. What is the most important issue you think in this election in terms of the difference between Biden and Trump when it comes to things that impact the tech industry from a true business perspective?
I mean, look, just the other day, Biden announced a capital gains tax of 44%.
Which you won't get.
Well, I don't know why you say that, because it was in the original, some version of this was in the original Build Back Better budget, and the only reason that didn't pass is because Manchin and Sinema opposed it, okay? Now, if Biden wins re-election and the Democrats get the trifecta like they had in Biden's first 2 years, but without Manchin and Sinema because they're not running again, then it stands every possibility of passing. So I don't think you can just say, oh, well, he's taking that view, that's a horrible policy, but we can just ignore it because it's never going to pass. I don't think you know that. I look at that and say, that policy is terrible. I'm not going to vote for my own financial liquidation. More importantly, the liquidation of Silicon Valley and the whole way that we do business. 44% capital gains tax, that would be 56% when you add California, plus, I didn't even get to this part, 25% unrealized gains tax. You guys ready for that? You raise a Series B or Series C, and all of a sudden you're taxed. You haven't made $1. There's not $1 in your bank account, but now you got to pay 25% of the paper value of your gains. We saw this happen with AMT.
Like an LP paying a management fee. It's terrible.
What's that? No. Well, okay, that's a whole different question. But no, it's not. It's really not a management fee. This is it's an onerous tax, and what it's most like actually is the AMT. Remember that when AMT first passed, they said this is only going to apply to super rich people. No, it didn't. It ended up hitting founders very badly, where they would have paper gains that could trigger the AMT and then have a huge tax, and there's a huge liquidity pinch. The same thing would happen here. I don't think that our whole, the whole way that Silicon Valley works based on stock options and, let's say widespread ownership of companies will survive in its current form if you have this 25% unrealized gains tax. Now, again, you can say, well, it'll never pass, but I think it's a pretty good reason for Silicon Valley to think really hard about who it wants to vote for. Same thing in the crypto ecosystem. I mean, Biden basically has let Elizabeth Warren and Gensler run.
You think Trump would be better on crypto?
100%. He just said in an interview the other day.
He did. You don't think that was just pure pandering?
It might have been pandering, but at least he's saying the right thing, and Biden is not saying the right thing. At least if he's pandering, there's a higher chance that maybe he'll do the right thing.
Let me ask one final question to you, which is non-political, kind of on a less divisive, positive note. Mm-hmm. You've been in the Valley for a very long time. You kind of, from PayPal on. Is there somebody you think about who's kind of been part of the growth of tech in the Valley who isn't incredibly well known? It's not Elon, it's not Peter, it's somebody who's very under the radar who you think has been extraordinarily important and you think people should know about? Or in your career?
That people don't know about? I mean,
that the average person doesn't know about.
Well, yeah, okay. Evan Owen, my co-founder at Glue.
That's a way to bring it back. That's nice.
So yeah, he's my partner, co-founder in Glue, and he's not famous yet, but hopefully he will be after Glue gets adopted.
David, thank you. I want to thank quickly, thank you all of you for coming. Thank you to the venue here at Terra, our catering team, CSL for helping put this on, Latham & Watkins, our partner, all of you for being part of the BFD experience. We will be back in New York City for the next BFD. I know I thought we were in New York earlier. We're not. We will be, though, on October 22nd, and we have drinks downstairs, so please get drunk on us. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. All right, well, we covered a lot of ground.